Hello everyone, and welcome to DC Talks, and a new kind of thing we're doing here. I'm Drew Kreisman, with my brother Ira Kreisman, and we had been talking DC, that is, the Detective Comics, and really more the Snyder arc, right? We'd completed the Snyder arc, did Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, the Snyder cut of the Justice League, and thought about maybe doing the rest of those movies, and we probably will at some point. Like, we've talked about this. We'd love to talk about Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Shazam, and even both Suicide Squad movies, and Peacemaker, you know?
Oh yeah, and Peacemaker. I'm only like 2 or 3 episodes in.
Peacemaker was good.
Mom and I were watching that together, and I haven't kept going yet.
Similarly, we'd love to talk about plenty of Marvel movies, any one of the 47,000 of those that there are now, and the television shows, and we haven't done Star Wars or any of that, but for whatever reason, when we'd been talking about a lot of this stuff and feeling a certain amount of nostalgia for these things we were into as a kid, or as one kid. Remember when we were little, we were just one person?
We were just one person, yeah. 5 years apart.
Right, exactly. But there were certain films that we watched over and over and over again, and we thought it would be fun to revisit them as brothers all these years later, rewatch them, take some notes, do this kind of podcasty thing we've been doing here, and figured that'd be pretty fun. And there's really no more perfect place to start than with the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. There is a rhythm to some of these movies that is embedded in my head like a pop song. And absolutely these 3 movies, especially the first one, but all 3 of them really, I just know them by heart. Before we started recording, we just started quoting the movie going forward. And just the way it sounds, from the ambient noise to the music to the lines, it lives in my head and will forever.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that on minimal volume, like you said, I was just kind of watching it and I could fill in not just the lines of dialogue, but the tones of the actors and, like you said, the music. The music in this, by the way, is very good. Super cool soundtrack or score for the flick that relies on just enough synthy stuff that it feels like of its time, but not so much of it that it feels like hokey and terrible to listen to today. Like, it still slaps and does its job. Like, top scores on the score for this, by the way, before we get into this.
Right. Yeah.
Since I broached that, we have some setup to do here in our relationship with this movie and franchise and all of that. But since we were talking a little bit about some behind the scenes stuff, I will just mention briefly that we are speaking here first, of course, about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 live action film directed by Steve Barron, on a story by Bobby Herbeck. Though if you really want to know the gritty, weird, remarkable behind-the-scenes details of all of that, we don't usually dive into that stuff too much. Sometimes when it's super interesting or it really gets into the art itself. But Toy Galaxy on YouTube, if you have not heard of them, make sure you check them out. And their history of Ninja Turtles videos, they've got several of them, whether it's the movies or the comic books or whatever it is you're interested in. They've got you covered. I could regurgitate that information, but I think if you're interested in it, it would be better just to send you that direction if those are the kinds of details that you like and help you feel ready to dive into something like this. So, Ira, in my recollection, now again, this movie came out in 1990. I was born in 86, so I believe that this was my introduction to the Ninja Turtles. Now, maybe we'd watched the cartoons and I was so little I don't remember. Do you remember having pre-history, pre-this movie history with the Ninja Turtles?
Oh, absolutely. The 80s cartoon show was a mainstay for me, and all the toys that came with it. I had several of them. I had a buddy who had specifically a Ninja Turtles toy bag thing for sorting all your various mutants and ninjas and warriors and wizards and whatnot.
Wow.
Yeah, I had the 4 main turtles plus some of the various villains, and they had a toy for every villain from every episode, it seemed. So not just your Shredders and Bebops and Rocksteadies and Baxter Stockmans and whatnot, but rather also the Pizza Monster. And that one time there was like a sort of Toxic Avenger character, and like all of them, every single one of them. And several more besides, and like Space Ninja Turtles and Cowboy Ninja Turtles. So there was a lot. And I loved the 80s cartoon. I didn't know at the time it was based upon this gritty black and white, pastiche of Daredevil.
Right.
I had no idea. That wouldn't come till later. So yeah, if it came out in 90, then I would have been about 9 years old, 8 or 9, and you're 5 years younger than me. So yeah, you'd have been kind of young to watch this movie too.
Yeah, and again, it's when you're at that age, a lot of the memories just kind of bleed together. You just remember being very, very young and watching the movie, right? And especially because, like we said earlier, this was one that we watched many, many times, so many times that all these years later, we still have most of the lines of dialogue memorized. It's, like you said, like a pop song. It's ingrained. Its very rhythms are just in there. So, yeah, I think I have vague recollections, but again, it's hard to tell if, it was from watching the cartoons later or from seeing stuff on YouTube or whatever. In fact, watching this particular movie, and like you said, the second and third ones too, but specifically this first one, many, many times is one of my earliest memories, just as a human being. So, yeah, this is a truly formative experience for me, was watching this movie and then going back and looking at it and getting into it. I'm kind of amazed by how much of it actually stands up and is quite good for something that on its base premise is very, 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 very silly.
Right, and I think one of the reasons it has the potential to be and then does succeed at being quite good is because, the premise is Mutant Ninja Turtles, but the core is the family, right? It's a father and four sons, and the friends they make along the way, and that's why something like this works. It's why I ended up really liking the Justice League movie, because they come together as friends, as a family. It's why I like Final Fantasy, because they come together, and those four boys are the Light Warriors, and they're going to have that last campfire. So
right.
I agree. I think this movie is very good. I think the other two movies are quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, right. I would agree in both regards. I especially upon rewatch, this first film, it's one of the best comic book adaptations of all time, honestly. And we'll get into some of why. But of course, we'll keep remembering that we are super duper biased and this thing just lives in our DNA. And you want to know how much it does. This will be the final sealing of the whole point. Because, we are loath to bring up big corporations and shill for their commercials of all things.
Goodness.
However, the fact that we have seen this Pizza Hut commercial hundreds of times, that when we rewatched it again on YouTube, kind of famous Pizza Hut commercial that was all about this Little League baseball team going out and I guess winning the big games. More about the right fielder. It's the song is about
the right fielder.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a moment.
Yeah.
For the kids who don't know,
sure.
When you took out your VHS tape and put it in the VCR to play it, you just had to play in order. You couldn't skip ahead in chapters, not like a DVD. If you wanted to fast forward, there was no menu. The fast forwarding was a lot less specific than it is when you're streaming.
Right.
So we would just go all the way to the beginning and play it, and there were almost always an ad or two at the beginning of your VHS. So you would watch that ad every time you watched the movie, and we watched this movie a lot. So yeah, there's this song. So actually the song I learned a couple hours ago is about 3 minutes long. There are a couple of stanzas, a couple of plot points that come before this. But the commercial, this Pizza Hut commercial that is in fact about a 1 minute piece of art, is about the right fielder. So, well, and so is the song, but it's only like the last plot point of the song. And it's just this kid, the smallest kid on the team. He's out in right field, way out where the dandelions grow. And there's like a dog wandering around out there, and there's like this giant manhole. It was one of the little league we played
field,
in.
Man. Yeah, it reminded me of home.
But ours was dirt and rocks. At least this kid's got grass and dandelions. But it's not a great outfield.
No.
And I played right field. Like I was that kid because I wasn't a great hitter. I wasn't a great fielder. I got better as I got closer to high school. But this always spoke to me because I was the outfielder who wasn't that great. And so it's just, he's out there. He's not paying attention. One of the lines is, there's strikes on the batter. Some runners are on.
Yeah,
like he doesn't know what's going on.
It is. I don't know. And suddenly everyone's looking at me. He's like, "What the hell's going on?
What the hell's going on?" And everyone's shouting at him. And he puts his mitt up and he catches the ball. And Goldberg, who plays the goalie,
plays
the
Mighty
catcher
Ducks.
rather. Yeah.
Goalie catcher. It's the same thing.
Sure. And they all rush out, and the coach has this dumbfounded look on his... Like, there's some good acting in this little 1-minute commercial.
This commercial's way too good for no reason.
And they rush out, and they celebrate, so they've won the game, a game, and then they all go to Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
And the kid, the hero of the day, is just very proud of himself.
Yeah.
And then it's... The line for Pizza Hut at the time was, "Making it great."
Yeah.
Like that was the little jingle at the end.
Yeah.
And, it's pizza, so it's sort of Ninja Turtles related.
Right. Well, and there was, and this is actually a weird thing to talk about. Again, not too much behind the scenes stuff from us normally, but there was a big licensing deal with Pizza Hut. And obviously the Ninja Turtles eat a lot of pizza, and that all makes sense. But the pizza that's delivered in the movie is Domino's. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's a great little commercial that has nothing to do with Pizza Hut until like the last 10 seconds. Like
right.
One of those.
Yeah. Well, because that's how, especially.
That's how they get you.
Well, because they're telling a story first. We're relatable. This is about people. This is about you.
Yeah.
No, it isn't. But at the same time, I mean, kind of it is. Like I said, I related to this commercial because I was, I wasn't that fast. I wasn't that strong. I wasn't, I was a kid, right? But all the other kids were better and stronger and faster and cared more. I would eventually realize, like, I was there to play ball, but I wasn't there to, like, play ball, I wanted to play baseball. I didn't want to win all the time. Yeah, I like this commercial, and that's a weird thing to say. But sometimes, people making commercials are trying to make a thing, too.
Sure. Why not? We begin with a report from April O'Neil.
Much more than just a series of small, isolated incidents, it's now apparent that an organized criminal element is at work. And at the moment, business is good. So good, in fact, that there appear to be no eyewitnesses to any of these crimes. With complaints ranging from purse snatching to breaking and entering, police switchboards have been swamped with the angry voices of more and more citizens who have fallen prey to the recent surge of crime that continues to plague the city.
So our story takes place in New York City, because that's where the Ninja Turtles live. We start with a shot of the Twin Towers, right? Remember, this was in the 80s. They were still standing. And it's, I don't know, weird to see them. I remember, especially right after the 9/11 attacks, seeing old movies with the towers in them. Like, there would be warnings whenever, if you rented a video saying, be aware, you're going to see the towers.
Yeah, I remember doing like a big, for whatever reason, not important, but a binge watch of the TV show Friends on DVD, like not too long after that happened. 'Cause it was when I was in college, so 9/11 happened when I was a freshman in high school, and it was just jarring. Every single episode you would see them, and it was just, this wasn't that long after it happened. So yeah, still to this day, seeing the towers is jarring.
Right. And now my students are younger than that event.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Right.
So anyway, you start with that iconic shot across the river, looking at the island and the towers. And this New York is kind of grungy, man. Like there's trash everywhere. Even a lot of the interior shots, like we're going to go to the Turtles' lair and all their furniture is broken down. A lot of the, like they're going to be at City Hall or the police station or something later on. And even that, like all the grout lines in the tile are kind of dirty and the subway's dirty. The streets are dirty. Even April O'Neil's apartment, it's not like it's dirty, not until the turtles show up, because boys are gross.
Right.
But like, there's paint wearing off here and there. Like the whole place feels just a little bit run down.
Yeah.
Just a little, we haven't had time to clean up, a little dark. And the next two movies are going to be a lot cleaner and a lot brighter. And I just think that's an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah. And again, from what I understand, there had been a lot of battling behind the scenes and over the years about how much the Ninja Turtles should be for kids and how much they should be, more like their original interpretation, which was a bit darker and a little bit more like Daredevil, or, they've kind of towed that line, and there's a lot more Ninja Turtles stuff out there that is much more geared toward the younger audience. But this movie, well, I still think it's family friendly.
Sure.
Like, we watched it a bunch as kids and we turned out fine.
But we also watched like Under Siege and The Fugitive.
Yeah, right.
Top Gun.
But this is an objectively darker, in fact, just in general, not just darker than the second two Ninja Turtles movies or most other Ninja Turtles properties. It's darker than most MCU movies. It's as dark as a lot of the DC, but in a totally different way.
Right. But it's also just kind of like dim and dusty and a little washed out. But it's also like very silly at times. Like even some of the big fight scenes are silly. Like Michelangelo's going to hit some dudes with cymbals later on.
Spoilers, jeez, man. But anyway.
So April's doing her thing, right? She's given her report. She's been reporting on this crime wave for a while. And then we get over, so like we see her sometimes in the background on these ancient 80s TVs.
Right. Boxy CRTV.
Yeah. And so as she's talking, like we'll see these crimes going on. So a redheaded, skinny white redheaded kid lifts a wallet out of a dude's pocket, standing right by the newsstand, and he's got the newspaper open. And every time you see somebody with a newspaper, it's the New York Post, and these giant headlines, crime wave, it's getting worse, things are terrible.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I feel a little bit like this movie is, do you know what your teenagers are doing? What if they're smoking and playing pool? What if they're like gambling on cards and robbing people's TVs off their stairwells? Because that's one of the next crimes we'll see is a kid, like, there's a lady sitting on her fire escape balcony watching TV, and she looks down, and when she looks up, her TV's gone, and there are these punk kids running away down the alleyway with it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of, like, subtle and not so subtle, what if the teenage counterculture of the 80s and 90s is a more serious criminal element. It almost rings of like, what if your kids playing D&D are actually into satanic stuff, right?
Oh my God. Were you old enough to remember the Satanic Panic stuff?
Only kind of. Again, I think that's stuff that I mostly absorbed through you, kind of like Thundercats and Transformers.
Right. Well, there's
a little early for me, but I remember saying, oh yeah, my brother plays Dungeons and Dragons, or we do Magic the Gathering, and people looking at me like, that occult stuff? And I was like, what are you talking about? They're fantasy games.
It was weird. And it was even for just like playing video games, because now video games are well accepted. But at the time, absolutely not. And I think part of that, because I experienced some of that, being told that I was going to go to hell or I was going to go crazy because people who play D&D think they can fly and jump off parking garages or whatever.
Right.
And I kind of think that I was a little young for it nationwide, but in our little Western Colorado area, we're always 4 or 5 years behind, it seems.
Right, sure, yeah.
And so I got a lot of the brunt of that. It was, looking back, it was very strange.
I do think that this movie preys on that whole kind of general panic toward geek culture, but I also think as part of geek culture and as people who very clearly loved comic books, and this is based on a comic book and it's a dark adaptation of one itself, and the Turtles themselves are imperfect and do a lot of different things that you'd be like, well, they're teenagers, right? They remind you that they're teenagers. They can be very, very frustrating, stupid teenage boys. But I do think they stop short of going all the way there, right? And being like, oh, you should just totally... Actually, what I will say is I think it does, and we'll get to this in a minute. I'm jumping ahead of myself here, as we tend to do, to kind of understanding why these young men feel lost. Right. Because the Turtles, especially through the eyes of Raphael, which we're going to get to here in a minute, also feel lonely and isolated and cast out by society and like they don't belong. So a lot of the question of this movie is, where do you turn when you feel like you have nowhere to turn?
Right. Do you turn to the Shredder or do you turn to Splinter? Exactly. Yeah. So the last event on this voiceover that I want to mention is she talks about the bizarre nature of these crimes. And so there's this guy in an alleyway who's delivering to a place, and we start on the back of the truck full of boxes and the delivery guy, and then we follow the delivery guy, so the camera pans over and he talks to whomever he's delivering to, and they sign a thing or whatever, and he comes back, and then there's a sound like... Yeah. Ninja noises. Right. Okay, good. And then we pan back and everything's gone.
Right.
And I have to assume this was a practical effect, right? Like there was probably a neat way they did this, because they're working with the Jim Henson people, right? Who are really good at practical effects. But I also feel like this movie sort of gets to get away with not always having to do a big stunt piece, because they're ninjas, so you don't see them do it.
It's done in the dark. It's very close. I think it's great. Yeah. But it's also, again, it's a good little show don't tell of what we're getting into, right? What were those, some ninja thieves? Yeah, actually. Yeah, totally.
And it is sort of like, okay, so people are stealing stuff. It's not great for most of us, but it's not like, bodies in the street, which right. If that was done today, it would be like, it's not just a crime wave, it's, ninja assassins murdering people for whatever reason.
Right. And then Ira, April O'Neil, who is a capital J journalist, by the way.
Good for her. Like several times in this movie, good for her.
Right. And this is the first one where she gets to be a badass. And, as a kid, I didn't think this was badass. I thought ninja kicking people through a window was badass. But no, this, especially when I see the cowardice of people in media these days, check out this sign-off. She says, "Unfortunately, the police are the only ones available." First of all, starting there, just starting with, unfortunately, the police are the only ones available. Like, whoa. Can you imagine, like, a big-time nightly news person taking that clear of a stance that the police have been incompetent? And then she says, the police are the only ones available to combat what some are already dubbing the silent crime wave. But perhaps the most disturbing silence is that coming from City Hall. That's what journalism is supposed to look like, by the way.
No kidding.
This idea of being objective or being non-biased and just presenting the facts and walking away like you're not a human being is absurd. You present a story, you report a story. This is what's happening. These are the people who're supposed to be doing something about it. They're not. So we, the citizenry, and we, the Fourth Estate, have a responsibility to ask why.
Yes.
April O'Neil, Channel 3, Eyewitness News.
Yeah. It's so good. She also quotes the Ghostbusters.
Yes, she does.
For what it's worth. Which is also a movie we should probably give this treatment to at some point.
100%.
Because she says, who are we going to call? Unfortunately, the police are the only ones available.
Yeah.
Like and her rhythm, the woman playing April here, her rhythm is fantastic.
Oh, it's great.
She's going to April has an interview later, and she does the same thing, and she does not pull her punches.
Love this version of April O'Neil so damn much. So the movie proper, really, after this opening montage over her report, begins with April leaving the studio, walking out into a dark and grimy street all by herself.
Yeah, man. So I had a student recently do their whole AP research project on systemic sexism in transportation. And one of the things they studied, they went to Denver to do this actually, and we're looking at number of lights around bus stations and whether or not they worked, among other things. But that was one of the data points they collected. And so I'm watching this thinking, why are there no lights on in this parking lot? Is this even a parking lot? Does she park in a alleyway?
Right.
Like, what is going on here?
Yeah. So just a clearly bad situation she's already walking into. She gets scared by a rat on the way, which is kind of funny, interesting foreshadowing of the relationship she's going to develop eventually with Splinter. But then, you know, again, if you've been paying attention, she happens to wander upon some of these young ninja thieves being very un-ninja-like. I will say this time they appear to be taking their time with unloading the truck with the TVs out of the back. Moving a little bit slower.
And there does seem to be a hierarchy amongst which of these young men are, who gets to wear the headband.
Right.
And none of these guys do yet.
No.
But they are out and about doing a thing. So they're at least that high up.
So, you know, as you might expect, these hooligans, these delinquents, go about mugging April O'Neil.
Yeah. Yeah. They could have just told her you didn't see nothing. But also she's a reporter and like she's not afraid of anybody, I guess. So
right.
But these guys don't watch the news. They don't know who she is. So they just mug her because they mug her.
Right. They're trying to grab her purse and one of them's all excited that he gets her watch and stuff.
I got her watch.
These are the lines that are still stuck in our heads all these years later. The guy going, I got her watch. And as soon as that guy is very excited about having got her watch.
Yes. Oh, man. Enter the heroes.
From off screen comes a single sigh, which is a three-pronged. It's Raphael's weapon. You know what it is if you're listening to this probably. But it's a weird thing. If a what now? A three-pointy, pokey knife.
Yeah, it's as much about, well, it doesn't have to be pointy, right? It's as much about like catching the enemy's weapon, right? There are three prongs, so you catch the sword and the thing, and then you can move it away.
In this particular case, Raphael uses it. And again, we don't see Raph. We just see the Psy come flying in from off screen and smashes a light to make it dark. And then we hear more in the dark ninja noises. Yeah,
this is another one of those where they didn't have to really pay the stunt actors for this part. I mean, I assume they paid them for the whole movie, but you know, that's not what this particular scene is about. This scene is about April does not get to see what's going on. And then the police show up very quickly. So for all that she was giving him shit 20 minutes ago.
True.
the police show up and the lights are flashing and the police are like, what's going on here? Get him. And like the kids are sitting there all tied up. So like whomever saved April O'Neil was ready to take on a bunch of punk kids mugging a news reporter.
Right, clearly. I will say during the darkness and all of the fighting, somebody, I'm going to presume Mikey, lets out a classic Bruce Lee. Wah! Like purely for effect. Like once everything has been settled, but then you're right. And then we get the answer to, well, where did they go? And you could probably guess if you knew what you were in for, if you know the lore of the film. But we zoom in, of course, on a manhole cover because our heroes have gone into the sewer, except one is pushing it up just a little bit and looking through.
Yeah.
Because his Psy is still out there.
He forgot to grab it. It was dark. He was excited for the fight. Yeah. He forgot to grab it on his way back to the sewer.
And the reporter has found it.
Yeah, she's on the ground, right? And the cops are checking her. Are you okay, ma'am? Yeah, I'm fine. All right, you sit there. We're going to take care of these punks. So she's sort of looking around. Nobody else is looking at her, and she notices, oh, what is this weird Japanese weapon I've never seen before? And she grabs it.
Yeah. Again, good reporter.
Right. Like, this thing just happened. Somebody rescued me. This wasn't lying here before, I'm pretty sure. And she just stuffs it in her bag.
And at that point, Raph realizes, well, I'm not getting it back right now. And he gives us our first of many classic and wonderful Raphael utterances of the word, damn.
Yeah.
There's a lot more swearing in this movie than there is in the second two as well.
Sure. Or the cartoons.
Right.
Which I think was deliberate. Like, on the one hand, this movie is sometimes very silly. But it really is trying to strike a balance between the gritty Eastman and Laird comic book and the 80s cartoon. It's going somewhere in between, and it's showing us that this is a different set of Ninja Turtles.
Right. So, to make that point perfectly, right after, and this shot is really, really good. It's like, again, super dark. Basically, the only lighting on Raph's face, and we're only looking at his eyes and his red bandana, right? And again, if you didn't even necessarily know what a Ninja Turtle was, it'd be a little confusing what you were looking at, because it's only being lit by the police lights flashing. And he's holding up the manhole cover just enough to see his eyes, and then he lets it down on himself and yells, damn, and it kind of echoes. And then we cut, and then the hero music kicks in, and we're back with the other three who are partying and celebrating the fact that they just kicked some ass.
Yeah, we were awesome, bros.
They're trading off. I love this part too. They're just trading off different words for awesome and spectacular. And then, of course, Donnie comes in with Bossa Nova. Leo and Mikey turn around and look at him and go, Bossa Nova?
What even is Bossa Nova? How do these kids know what Bossa Nova is?
And then here's a joke I definitely didn't get as a kid, and the first of 1,000 real life or pop culture or random references that I have to assume were for the adults that we made watch this crap 100 times over and over again.
Right.
Because then Donnie says, Chevy Nova? I had no idea what a Chevy Nova was when I was 5.
I think that for kids, it's, oh, well, Donnie's the one who's kind of a dork.
Right.
I mean, they're all dorks, I guess, but he's the nerd. He's not going to know the cool thing to say at the right time.
Right.
Which, yeah, I appreciate. I like that.
Totally. He decides to arrive on excellent, and then they can continue on with their high-fiving and congratulating themselves. And the whole time, Raph is just moping behind him, like not engaging in the celebration.
Yeah, so one of them here in a bit says like, oh man, we were great. And he goes, oh man.
Yeah. And then Donnie yells out, all right. Like they're just in two completely different places. And again, the rhythm of that, I love it. You were talking about before we came on the way the banter works in this. And they often talk over each other or talk at the same time, or they're talking about different things. And I think that presents a very realistic sort of brotherhood and even family dynamic. Families can be that way a lot of times because I already know what you're going to say. So I'm going to, keep talking. Or, we're not going to pay attention to Raph. He's in one of his funks right now. Let him be in his funk right now.
Right. You don't always have to talk to your brother when he's in a bad mood. Sometimes he wants to be left alone.
Right. I love, instead of saying, give me 5, they say, give me 3.
Right.
Because they're turtles. They only have 3
Because
digits.
they're turtles.
Get it? But do you get it?
I do. I do get it.
Right.
So they're excited. They're hungry. They're going to have pizza. They've talked about pizza a couple times now.
Yeah.
And they finally, they're walking through the sewers and they finally get to their lair, their home. And then it's, okay, all right, shh, everyone bring it down.
Yeah. Be cool, be cool, be cool, be cool.
Yeah, because, their elderly father is here.
Yeah.
And also their ninja master sensei.
Right. Father twice over.
That's right. Oh, geez.
Ah.
So I think it's Leo who approaches and is given the debrief. And he said, we have had our first battle, Master Splinter. They were many, but we kicked... We fought well.
I love that Leo is still calming himself down too. Like that he's coming in off the adrenaline rush. They were just pumping each other up outside in the hallway sewers, walking in. They're really amped coming into the room. Leo's trying to calm everybody else down, but then he almost tells Splinter that they kicked some ass. It's like, whoa. Right. No. I mean, we fought well.
And then he says, "Were you seen?"
Oh, Splinter.
Yes.
By the way, let's stop for just a moment, even though we're right in the middle of an important point and a recurring motif from Master Splinter, and just recognize, now that we can see them, now that there's actually some light in the room, and we can see all 4 turtles and Splinter. It's dark, but there's candlelight, and we can see them. Jim Henson and the Creature Shop, the puppeteers, the emotions in the faces, like, it is incredible. There is no freaking way that this movie would hold up as well as it does and be as watchable as it is today if they had tried to make this on like computers at the time, or even a lot of like practical effects I don't think would have worked. They really needed, only this was going to do it. Only Jim Henson could have made this movie believable. And so we can't say his name enough times, but man, you see Splinter and it looks like a wise old man who just happens to be a rat.
Yeah, it really, I mean, I knew as a kid, these are puppets, these are suits, but I could pretty easily let myself be convinced that these were all real people, for the length of the movie when I was young.
Yeah.
And even now, like I rewatched it, right, so we can talk about it. I was like, obviously, they're not real people, but because of the way, because they're using practical effects, so the way the light comes off them, right? The way the shadow plays,
right?
They move just enough in all the right ways to look convincing. It's really neat.
Yeah.
So Splinter, hey, speaking of that Zack Snyder Justice League arc we just watched, is a little bit paranoid.
Yeah.
Because in this you must never lapse. Even those who would be our allies would not understand. Our domain is the shadow. Stray from it, reluctantly. I'm going to fall into the rhythms of the movie sometimes.
I know. I almost went into the voice for the next line. I was like, for when you do. Because again, I can always hear this last part in my head so clearly.
Right. But you got to be careful about doing another culture's accent, right? So you got to be careful how far you go there.
Right.
But for when you do, you must strike hard and fade away without a trace.
A trace. That's good ninja shit. I don't care who you are. That's what we come to ninja stuff for.
Yes, it's very good.
What's also great is that this is like a really intense moment Splinter's trying to have. And I think because Leo just messed up a little bit, he's focused. And I think Donnie is taking it all in. But the other two are not exactly in the moment here with Splinter.
Right.
Raphael's still pissed off about something else. He's going to clearly make it obvious he wasn't paying attention. Because the second Splinter is done with this beautiful speech about why they need to remain in the shadows, he just blurts out, "I lost a sigh."
Whereas Michelangelo is just hungry.
He's just getting ready to order pizza.
He's already got the phone book in his hand. And the phone book's like falling apart.
Totally. Raggedy ass phone book. And he's clearly just like... No, I don't buy this in terms of continuity. The Ninja Turtles would clearly have the place of the pizza number memorized.
You have it memorized,
yeah,
sure.
That's right. This is ridiculous filmmaking.
But Master Splinter is very... he says, Raphael admits to losing the sigh, so he's failed. He did not fade away without a trace. And Splinter says, well, then it's gone.
Yeah.
But Raphael's not having it. Missing the point, by the way. But
Totally
I can get it back. I can get it back.
Get it back. Such a teenager thing to... But I can... let me fix it.
I can fix my mistake. And it's not about that, Raphael.
Yeah.
I think he's mad that he failed. But also, it's... In a lot of ways, the Turtles are defined by their weapons as much as their attitudes.
Right.
And he feels defined by his tools.
But, again, they tell him, right, man, you got to let it go. Not his strong suit.
Right.
But then Splinter just goes back to pontificating. He's like, guys, I'm trying to give you a lesson here at the end of your first mission. Like, listen, and your ninja skills are getting very, very good.
Right.
There's one lesson here that must be learned. Might it be the theme of the film?
It might be the theme of the film. And I find this kind of interesting because they have a TV, right? We're going to see them watching TV later. But so they must know that this crime wave is going on too. So Splinter must have given them permission to go up to the surface and stop a mugging.
Right.
Does he know what's going on here?
Oh, yeah. I get the sense that he's been maybe even training and planning for all of this for a while, right? Even though I don't think that's ever said explicitly.
Right.
Which is pretty clever. And again, I love the contrast here that as he's trying to start to impart on them wisdom that they will need but aren't going to receive or hear or have until very late in the movie, Michelangelo, it's very Cloud Strife at the beginning of Final Fantasy VII. Like, sure. yeah, you're preaching, whatever. But Mikey's now in the midst. He's on the phone. He's ordering pizza. So intercut with, like, there's a very important lesson that remains, and it is hard for you underground, and I understand. We're getting like, I'll get a double cheese with some ham, some pepperoni.
I really like that Splinter says your teenage minds are broad and eager, but you must never stop practicing. Yeah, but no anchovies, man. It's like the back and forth, the intercut is really funny. And right. I think it's great that he's on a payphone.
Totally. Like, right. I can't trace that, too.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Also, no payphone exists anywhere in the world anymore.
Oh, man. Very much like stepping back in time watching this movie has been. But yeah, like right at the time that Splinter is finishing up about the importance of practicing the art of invisibility, Mikey is like almost close to cursing this dude out for the possibility that he might put anchovies on the pizza.
Right. Not that he's done anything yet.
Right.
If you do, you're in big trouble, okay?
And then Splinter throws a book at him.
With excellent accuracy.
Totally.
Like, Splinter in this movie is old. He is slowing down. He is not moving real well. But he doesn't need to get up from his chair to tell Michelangelo to knock it off and pay attention.
Yeah. And Mikey does give one last, the clock's ticking, dude, to the guy, which actually sets up something that's going to happen later about the arrival of the pizza. But the book throwing does allow us to calm everything down and get... Okay, so now Mike's done ordering the pizza and Raph has had his outburst, and now all four boys can sit and hear one very important thing for about 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm. But they do pay attention here, and it's important because we need to pay attention too.
Yeah. Splinter says, "You are still young, but one day I will be gone. Use my teachings wisely. I suggest we all meditate now." Dun, 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 dun. And then the boys throw on like record scratch, literal record scratch. On comes Tequila.
Tequila. This is the first place I heard that song.
Same. I always thought that the song was actually about ninjutsu. I didn't know it was actually about tequila. Ninjutsu. Again, the pop culture references in all three movies, I will say, are unmatched. Eat your heart out, Pixar.
The Ralph Nader reference in the next movie.
Dude. Who's gonna... Yeah. And I love that Mikey says, as they're dancing to Tequila, this is like meditating, which there's an argument to be made that music and dance are kind of like meditating. But,
sure, yeah.
Yeah. I love this exchange, too. I really love the way this sets up Leonardo's eventual leadership style and him starting to go down that arc, and their relationship with Raphael. And we've seen him as the kind of outcast, angry one already, and he's put on a trench coat and a hat, so he's like clearly getting ready to go out somewhere. And Leo still dancing to Tequila, shaking his shoulders, whatever. Hey, Raph, Where are you going? And Raph, with all the attitude in the world, out to a movie. That okay with you?
Yeah. Hey, I got a question, Drew. How come Raphael has that accent, but none of the rest of them do?
I know, right? I love it. Raphael's the most New York of all the New Yorkers. California dude Mikey for some reason, but also born in, who knows? I'm sure there are reasons, but I don't need any.
Fair enough.
Then again, Ira, like you were talking about earlier, that sort of contrast. We go from the boys, like, keep not listening to wisdom, throwing on silly music, dancing around, ordering pizza. And then we get this really beautiful scene just outside, under the moonlight. Again, very, very dark. We've got pale moonlight, and they're sitting in a sewer.
Right.
And it's just Donatello and Michelangelo. And even the little introduction, just the nice night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
Pizza
even
dude's
that.
got 30 seconds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like they're both like thinking about the one thing, but I think they're both thinking about both things.
Yeah.
And Donatello is just a little more ready for it than Michelangelo says. And he only gives this one little thought voice just for a moment. He just says, "Hey, Mikey, you ever think about what Splinter said tonight? I mean, about what it would be like, you know, not having him?"
Yeah. Man.
Yeah. It's just, this is just so well done. It really, and there's just enough of a pause. And Mikey, you know, gives another, mm-hmm. And then goes back to the pizza. Time's up. $3 off. He's not ready to deal with it.
Right.
So beautiful. Like it sounds silly to say that's as simple. That's it. That's the scene. Over. It's over.
Yep.
It's two or three lines of dialogue, but I find this interaction between the two of them really touching.
It's quiet. It's almost like what we talk about when we talk about Ghibli films.
Yes.
Right. It's a very quiet moment. We've had the fight. We know about the crime wave. We've had the serious interaction with Splinter that was broken up with ordering pizza and playing records, and now it's, I'm not ready to talk about this right now.
Yeah. All right, here's another random ass scene that I remember every single line of dialogue to, like it's an Abbott and Costello bit.
Uh-huh.
It kind of is a little bit.
It kind of is, because it's the repetition, right?
Yeah.
So a guy comes up on a scooter wearing a Domino's delivery shirt. Definitely not Pizza Hut.
And it's clearly not.
It's actually really funny. The guy playing the delivery guy is Mikey's suit puppeteer guy.
Right.
So he rides up, he turns off the bike, and he says, 122, 122, 122 and an 8.
2 and an 8th.
122 and an 8. Terrific. Where the heck is 122 and an 8? And he's standing on a sewer grate, right? He's not standing in front of a door. And this is a dark street. There are like no lights on here.
Right.
Like, how many places have you delivered to, dude, that this is like fine?
Right. He's gonna get mugged. And I'm sure there's probably an extra New Yorker joke here as far as streets go, because 122, I don't know it enough, but I've heard enough stand-up comedians who are from New York who talk about once you get over a certain number of streets. So I think we're supposed to understand that, like, yeah, you don't want to be at 122 and an 8th. This is a bad place to be. And then, like, he wouldn't be freaked out enough. Just an echoey voice from underneath him. You're standing on it, dude.
Yeah. He has the delivery guy there's like a break in the grate. Just slip it down here. And so he puts the pizza box on its end, which would just smush the pizza, but whatever.
Of course.
And he slides it down there, and there's a $10, and he grabs the $10 bill. Give me that.
Yeah.
Hey, this is the 10. The tab's 13.
You're 2 minutes late, dude.
Oh, come on. I couldn't find the place. Like, this is that rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
just
man.
Forever. And I have stolen the beginning of this quote many, many times and repurposed the end for whatever I'm thinking about on any given day. but Michelangelo says, in his best Splinter, wise man say, forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
And so there's a part of this movie, we talked about them talking over each other, but sometimes it's like grumbling under their breath as they leave. The delivery guy says, I got to get a new route. I thought I delivered everywhere. He turns on his bike and takes off.
Got to get a new route. Oh, man. Keeping the comedy bits going, we move from a brief Abbott and Costello sketch to like a sketch comedy, like SNL style, like commercial parody where Michelangelo, is it Mikey? Yeah, Mikey's doing the voice, right?
Yeah, Mikey's doing the voice, but Leo's doing the work.
Right. So I think Donnie throws the pizza in the air, so he's got the easiest job. Leonardo starts slicing it up with his katana for everybody. And Michelangelo is doing a fake commercial for the new Turbo Ginsu. It slices, it dices, and yet it makes French fries in 30 different... Yeah. And as he's trying to make his jokes, some pizza lands on Splinter's head, which is just classic comedy.
Right. And this is an attempt to, like, translate a cartoon into live action, right? Like, because of course you can't do that. There's no way that would work. But it works in cartoons, and so this is cartoon logic.
Totally.
And I feel like it mostly pretty works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I buy that Leo is good enough to cut up the pizza in the middle of the air and have all the slices land perfectly on the first two guys' plates. But then, you know, he's a little off on that third one, so it lands on Splinter's head. Like, I buy it. And then, so as those guys are having their fun, weird, nonsensical, cartoonish, literally and figuratively cartoonish pizza dinner, we cut back to Raphael. Remember, he's gone out to see a movie. And he's walking out of Critters.
Yeah. Goodness. Have you ever seen Critters?
I have not.
Me either, but I know that movie poster because of this movie. It's just this weird creature, like almost like a upright porcupine looking thing.
Right.
And so he's come out of this monster movie just disgusted.
Yeah.
Just, where did they come up with this stuff?
I love that line. It just so ironic.
Right.
Kind of looking at me and like, that's absurd, but what we're watching now is very gritty and real.
Yeah, there's a certain self-awareness there, right?
Totally. So as Raph is, walking the streets, presumably heading back home, he happens to witness another mugging. Pretty these guys are getting pretty brazen. I mean, I guess it was on the report. It was on the news. I should have been paying attention, but these two guys just run by and grab some lady's purse and try to run off into, I think, Central Park.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And so, these guys have got the purse. They're running off. They're trying to make their escape. And just with no effort whatsoever, Raphael just, again, it's almost like classic comedy, slapstick stuff. He just sticks out his foot and they both trip over it.
Right. And it's worth noting that Raphael's disguise out here in the nightlife of New York is a trench coat, a hat, and a backpack. And that is it.
Yeah. And there's a comment, and in fact, there's going to be a direct one in a little while about, like, just people in New York kind of minding their own business and maybe that being part of the reason, or people in big cities not paying attention, and you can get away with certain crimes when that happens, right? But yeah, apparently no one's looking at all at this guy's face. Just a turtle. But he trips the goons and he gets the purse back and he throws it back to the lady. Again, like you said earlier, kind of the camera trick. It comes from off screen, so we get the sense that she never sees who helped her. Again, kind of like April, who was my hero? I have no idea. Right, and the goons are kind of take off and are taking refuge there in Central Park. When all of a sudden...
so the thieves say, "What the hell was that?" And the other one says, "I don't know." And then the next hero arrives.
Yeah. And again, if you know the lore, you know immediately this is Casey Jones as he drops down with the hockey stick and the mask and the whole thing. If you don't, there's just suddenly a guy there wearing a hockey mask and wielding a hockey stick. And this has got to be one of the greatest introductory lines of dialogue in the history of comic book film. Because again, the goons asking about Raphael, had asked, what the hell was that? Casey Jones says, now that was a crime, you purse-grabbing pukes. And this is the penalty. And he hits him with the hockey stick. Come on. Boom. Sometimes the corny dialogue, sometimes... And look, the sports references are about to go off. Like the pun game is about to go to 11, right?
Yeah, it's pretty great. And he's like calling out his own penalties as he's beating these guys up, right? 2 minutes for slashing, 2 minutes for hooking, and let's not forget my personal favorite, 2 minutes for high sticking.
All hockey references.
Right.
All things in hockey.
I know hockey.
Yeah, sort of.
I've been to a
also,
game or two.
Shout out to the phrase purse-grabbing pukes, by the way. Like, that's just, you got to call out good writing when you see it.
And the delivery.
Pukes.
Like, this guy, Elias Koteas, I think his name is, like April's actor, is, like, he just leans into it. Like, absolutely.
But before Casey Jones can complete the high sticking, he gets shoved in the back by an unseen, though now seen, Raphael, who continues the motif to his credit. He apparently knows his hockey. He doesn't mind the puns. And he says, how about a 5-minute game misconduct for roughing, pal?
And then I did not understand this reference for a very long time. Casey looks at Raphael and says, hey, Bogey, now who died and made you referee?
Right.
Bogey, is he calling him Humphrey Bogart?
Yeah, there's, right.
What bunch of kids watching this movie in 1990 know who Humphrey Bogart is?
Again, another one of those things that definitely flew over my head, but it's a funny sounding word. So I laughed at him for calling him a bogey. And then again, keeps the motif going. Who died and made you referee? Because they were calling out penalties. Like, I guess you were a referee, but you're a referee and a player. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, that's not fair at all. It's like managing a game and playing it and possibly putting money on it at the same time. There's a conflict of interest.
Right. And now we get a conflict of philosophies. Now we get this, as we do in any vigilante, any good vigilante and or comic book story that deals with this type of issue, where do you draw the line? Casey Jones says these JV lowlifes need to be taught a lesson. Now I've got a question for you, Ira. How old is Casey Jones?
That's an excellent question. I think...
Because beating the shit out of 16-year-olds on the side of the street.
Because they're going to confirm that the Turtles are 15 here in a while. I have to assume that April and Casey are like mid-20s, mid-late 20s. Because they're not that much older,
out
right?
here, like, and he calls them JV lowlifes, and it's like,
I kind of get the impression, though, that Casey Jones wasn't exactly like Dean's List, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, he had his own run-ins with the law as a kid, I'm thinking. And then in the 2012 Nickelodeon animated Ninja Turtles, he's of an age with them, as is April, which is really, I like the way they handled it in that cartoon. But here, he's an adult, and they're children, or teenagers, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of weird. But the whole thing is weird, so I'm calling this out as weird. Well, it doesn't break it for me, right? Like, I don't bump off this and think, well, that doesn't make any sense, because the whole, like, I've already bought in. So, but that he is maybe a little older, a little wiser, a little whatever, and the conflict of philosophy is interesting, right? Like, you did your job, you got the purse back, you returned the property. Now I'm gonna beat up these guys because, like April said, unfortunately, the police are the only ones available, and they're not doing their jobs.
Right, and they're going to fight back against the crime wave. But Raphael, who we've already seen would probably be the turtle most likely to seek some kind of angry or more violent vengeance, right? Shows us that, no, he understands the teachings of Master Splinter, and he says, not like that, they don't. Not from you. Like, some
Yeah.
guy with a hockey stick beating up these kids in Central Park is not how we are going to solve this problem, man. And he's right.
Yeah, he is right. It's interesting that removed from his brothers and Splinter, he's the one who takes the reasonable position. And I guess he's had some time to cool down, right? He's watched
Right.
a dumb movie.
He said he went to the movies. Chilled out a bit.
So yeah, that is really interesting. So what is the line, right? Like, or what did he think Casey was going to do to cross that line? I mean, it's
Right.
no Batman flattening goons in Gotham City with his tankmobile, but I don't know, beating the shit out of these kids in Central Park. Yeah, how different is that from beating up the thugs who were taking on April?
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know. But I guess because these guys were already running away, the purse had been returned,
Sure.
you know?
Sure. Yeah.
But they decide to get right back into the pun game. And Casey Jones decides, well, since you're here messing with me and not letting me do what I'm out here doing, I guess you're the one that needs to be taught a lesson. And speaking of teaching lessons, the class is Pain 101, and your instructor is Casey Jones. And that's where we get his name. And again, remember that he is very into whatever this style of conversation is.
Right. Yeah. And using sports equipment as melee weapons.
Right. So as he's saying this, he's actually pulling out a baseball bat. He's thrown aside the hockey stick. He's got a baseball bat now. And, Raphael doing the right thing. At first he's like, look, I don't want to fight you. Though, I don't know. I kind of get the sense that Raphael wouldn't mind fighting this guy for just a second.
I think, he just had this conversation with Splinter, right? Splinter just imparted his wisdom. He's trying to take it to heart. I'm trying to follow the lessons of the sensei. I don't want to fight you. Casey Jones, though, does not have a sensei, and he says, well, tough rocks, pal.
Yeah. He just comes over, starts trying to wail on him with the bat. Raphael catches the bat and then utters the single greatest line in the history of cinema. Oh. It is rare. It is very rare that you can make a joke that's really funny for its time and that is built around a pop culture reference of its time. And then that joke actually gets better with every year that passes. And there's no way that whoever wrote this could have known. But what happens is, as Raph is holding the bat, he notices what type of bat it is. And if you're not a baseball fan, a lot of this would probably fly completely over your heads. But he says, a Jose Canseco bat? Oh, tell me you didn't pay money for this. Now, if you don't know baseball history, you could probably just guess that, okay, what Raph just did was he slighted one of Casey Jones' favorite players. And a guy who's easy to take shots at, who some people are going to love and who some people are going to hate. And in 1990, that's who Jose Canseco was. This big slugging hitter for the Oakland A's, kind of a meathead, kind of a silly dude, but mostly just known for being a little bit silly and ridiculous and also for hitting monster home runs, right? So some people loved him, some people hated him, whatever. But over the years, Jose Canseco has become an increasingly ridiculous human. He's like outed people on steroid stuff. He actually predicted the breakup of Alex Rodriguez and Jennifer Lopez. He's one of the weirdest people. He's written several books. Like, again, Google it. We don't have time for all of it. But again, it's just wild to go back and hear this joke about Jose Canseco, who's such a profoundly absurd human and only got much more absurd after Raphael made this joke.
Casey Jones kind of takes it in stride, though, because he goes, 2-for-1 sell, pal, and hits him with the other bat.
2-for-1 sale, pal. We're all taking a shot at Jose Canseco today, as you should. Again, he's a ridiculous person. Oh man, and they don't stop, because once he hits him with the bat the second time, he knocks Raphael's cap off, and now finally someone has seen that he's like got green skin and stuff. But still, I guess the power of disbelief or whatever, the mind making some sense out of it. Casey doesn't seem to get it right away. He thinks he's what are you, some sort of a punker? again, another word we don't really use. It might just call him a punk or a goth kid. What are you, some kind of weird? What are you, weird kid?
Cosplayer, right? Furry.
Right, yeah. A furry, right. And I think, God, I hate punkers. Not an enlightened person is Casey
Casey's
Jones.
kind of a dick in this movie. Not like he's definitely a good person, but he does some things that are like sort of the meathead jock things that are. He's a little bit sexist,
right?
Yeah.
Other things we'll talk about, but it's just you get the sense here right away, and so he takes a few more shots at Raph and explains that he's like, oh, yeah, especially some bald ones with green makeup, wearing masks over their faces. Okay, so that's what you're into.
So Casey's kind of got Raph's number here, right? Because he's making Raphael mad. So Raphael's not quite as good a fighter when he's mad. So he's got one of the bats, and Casey's got one of the bats, and Raphael takes a swing, and Casey says, "Ooh, strike one!"
Strike one.
Raph misses again, but on the third one, he hits him, and he says, "Home run!" And then we get the baseball music.
Bum 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 bum.
Raphael wins.
So
One nothing. So, and this is not like they're fighting and then they're stopping. So I think they kind of realize I don't need to beat this guy. It's just now we're having this one-on-one. Like it's a little back and forth. So they're okay with stopping for a moment and giving each other shit.
Right. In fact, Raph even stops and asks, basically to that effect, like, well, like, are we done? Are we still going?
Right.
What's the deal here? And Casey says, new game, Roundhead.
Rude, Roundhead.
And then we get to more stuff we definitely did not fully understand as kids. Because he pulls out a cricket bat, which apparently Raph at least recognizes to his credit right away. Cricket? Nobody understands cricket. You got to know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. What a great line that we definitely didn't understand but still laughed really hard at because of the delivery as kids.
Right. Yeah, I still barely know what cricket is. I have watched videos on YouTube explaining how cricket isn't that complicated, and I don't get it.
Lies. It's very complicated. Nobody understands what happens next, because then after Casey Jones, again, with one last quip and one final pun, gets to say, I'll teach you. Remember, instructor Casey Jones. He's going to teach him about cricket because he doesn't know what a crumpet is. Smashes Raph with it, knocks him into a trash can, and goes, see? 6 runs. There is nobody who understands that. There are 0% of people in the world get the punchline to that joke, and that didn't stop them from doing it anyway. Because we get the idea of it, that it's a cricket thing, is all we really need to know for us to get that he got the upper hand both verbally and physically over Raphael there.
You know, this is one of the most popular sports in the world.
I know.
Okay, just so we're all clear. There are plenty of people who understand
that. Doesn't mean those people understand it either, dude. I cover baseball for a living, and every once in a while I got to reach for the rule book and be like, what even the hell is that? So, you know.
You can understand a balk to me.
Yeah.
So Casey takes off. He says, so long, freak, I got work to do. And Raphael says, freak!
Yeah.
Freak!
Yeah. He's actually pissed there. Like you said, he started to lose his cool a little bit during the fight, but Raphael doesn't really lose it until he calls him a freak, which is, actually ties the whole thing from him walking out of the Critters movie and being, where do they come up with this stuff? Now, it's not just a funny joke or self-referential. It's like, why are the non-humans always the monsters that eat your family?
Right.
Is that what I am? Am I a monster? Am I a freak?
And this is a storyline that's going to go into the next movie.
Yeah.
Right? And I really like it because, like you were talking about earlier, there's a dichotomy between the teenage boys who are being drawn to this criminal organization and how they feel lonely. Because, as we will learn, the outside world rejects them. And Splinter's saying something similar, but with a totally different context of they won't understand you.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that loneliness? And, well, at least right now, Raphael goes tearing after Casey Jones down the street.
Yeah.
No matter that a taxi cab, pulls right up in front of him and he's got to roll over it.
Right. And it's like this really intense moment where he's sprinting after Casey Jones in a blind rage. And like you say, just totals the front of that taxi as he rolls over and just crunches the hood of it. And he's so pissed. And then, Ira, we get the best line in the history of cinema.
I think you said that 3 or 4 times this episode. I just want to point out.
I just want to say it had been until this. Remember,
All right.
Jose could think about it. No, I've always loved this particular joke, too, because, one, it's objectively hilarious, and two, it drives home again that thing we were talking about earlier where people in New York, maybe in big cities in general, and certainly in this version of the story, very much mind their own business.
Right. Yeah.
So after how big are the turtles? 6 foot tall?
Well, no, they're short, man. They're short. They'll show us very clearly that they're shorter than April. Okay,
yeah, that's right. Later on, we get that shot of them being shorter than her. But so either way, certainly larger than normal, right? This Ninja Turtle, like
larger than you would expect a turtle to be.
Yeah, big loud noise. As far as the guy in the back of the taxi is concerned, just big loud noise. You know, they're driving down the street. What the heck was that? And the cab driver responds, it looked like sort of a big green turtle in a trench coat. You going to LaGuardia, right? like he's unfazed completely.
There's this idea in storytelling that you don't have unnecessary scenes, right? Like if it's not furthering the plot, cut it. No word is worth a line, no line is worth a paragraph, no paragraph is worth a chapter, no chapter is worth a story, right? If it's not working for you for whatever reason, you cut it. But sometimes you keep stuff like this because it furthers character development. And I think in this case, this particular exchange furthers the character development of this version of New York City.
Yeah.
This grimy, dirty, kind of run down, crime wave, mind your own business, New York City. And I love it for that, but also it's just hilarious. Because LaGuardia as an airport, I haven't been there in like 10, 15 years, but man.
Right. But yeah, the idea that you might actually see something weirder at LaGuardia than a turtle rolling across the hood of the taxi. So there's just so much built into it. Probably works even better for New Yorkers, but even for us as kids, I always loved that line. Like, it looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat. Anyway, you're going to LaGuardia, right? It's that meme, the anyway, you know. Right. Oh, wow. Anyway. And then I really love this part, too. We get back to Raph's anger, and he is screaming at Casey Jones, but he's not going to catch him. And he's yelling, come back here. I'm not finished with you, is a thing an angry kid says.
A minute ago, he was telling Casey Jones to cool it. Right, you don't get to just beat up these kids, and now he's ready to mess up Jones.
Yeah. And then Raph has his, like Cloud Strife with not interested and Squall Leonhardt with whatever. Raphael has his own very brief catchphrase, and he screams it, and we get one of those shots where it feels like it echoes throughout the entire city of New York. And remember, they're supposed to be ninjas.
Right.
But he just screams, "Damn!"